That just makes me happy. It's like every time it plays, I'm like, oh, this is so cheesy. I love cheesy intros. So, welcome back, everyone, to my 32 fan series. I'm talking to 32 different fans from all the 32 NFL teams. And so, before anybody says anything, this is recorded in May, at the very beginning of May. So, if anything dramatic happens, if anything crazy happens, and we don't talk about it, it is because we didn't know that it was going to happen. So, just calling that out. The other thing is, everybody has the same questions and we'll move through this. I know sometimes I look up and some people are like, they didn't know the question you're going to ask. And I'm like, everybody knows the questions, everybody. So that's good. So we're good to go there. The other thing is the way this is going to release might trigger some people, but that's okay. We'll talk about that when I'm done recording. Anyways, so I will let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you. And I'm actually happy and excited to hear you talk about the 49ers because I feel like I often hear you talk about like a different division. So I'm excited for this actually.
Well, for those that don't know, my name is Mike Patton. I am the host and producer of Touring the AFC South. And also the host and producer of This Woman Works, which I have two different podcasts I host and produce, by the way. Of course, I talk about the Titans, the Texans, the Jaguars, and the Colts pretty much every single week with multiple guests and sometimes myself. And of course, with This Woman Works, I like to bring on Black women that are doing great and amazing things and have them tell their story of how they got to where they are. I've been doing podcasting for roughly about 4 years, but I also write. I am a freelance journalist, so I do a few things for the NABJ Black News Views. I actually write the sports history in Black for them for every week. And also I do a few other freelance things with the Nashville Voice, among other places as well. So, as you can hear, I'm sorry. I was going to say, as you can say, but as you can hear, I do a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
But I am a 49ers fan. I am a 49ers fan, by the way. Let me mention that.
I was just going to say, how did you become a fan of the 49ers? Like, is that your childhood team? Is that like, how did you become a fan?
Okay, I get this question a lot because everyone assumes because I live in Nashville that I'm a Tennessee Titans fan. No, here's the thing. I hope the Titans do well, and I root for them to do well. However, my favorite team is the 49ers because when I was a kid, wanted to be a wide receiver and I wanted to be Jerry Rice. So
Okay.
I listened and I watched and I was like, I want to be Jerry Rice. And I got to a certain age and I was like, yeah, I don't have the hands like Jerry Rice, and they're probably not going to put me at wide receiver. And I hit about 10th grade, I realized I was going to be a defensive back. And ironically, I was wearing number 21 when I was in high school. But
Okay.
yeah, so I just realized that I was going to be a defensive back more than I was going to be a wide receiver. And I hit about 10th grade, and I was like, yeah, I'll let those dreams go, but I'm not going to let go of the 49ers.
Perfect. Okay. I like it. And so how did you feel last season went for the 49ers? I've admitted to you offline, and I usually admit, like, every time I talk about football, is there certain franchises where I know what I'm going to get from them. I know I have expectations. It just is what it is. The 49ers are one of those teams. Also, my favorite linebacker resides there in Fred Warner. So I would love to know, though, for you, how was the season for you? How did you feel the season went overall? And then I would love to know your song that you think represents last season.
Well, first things first, Fred Warner was actually a guy that was more of a pass linebacker or pass coverage linebacker when he was at BYU. So it's amazing that he's developed into this all-world linebacker that he is, but that's just attributed to just the 49ers and I guess their eye for talent.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
just in regards to the season last year, I was like, anything that could go wrong did go wrong. A lot of things, like, you had Debo was struggling catching the football. They weren't really kind of moving the ball around as much in terms of, the movement of players because, they're one of the teams that move around a ton in terms of pre-snap adjustments and things like that. They didn't really do that quite as much last year. Christian McCaffrey, of course, one of the keys as to why that didn't happen, was injured for a majority of the season. And, you have your rookie wide receiver gets shot at the autograph signing. So, yeah, a lot of things go on that, all happened in that season. And, of course, it didn't culminate to any wins on the football field, which left the 49ers out of the playoffs. So a lot of things happened. What could go wrong did go wrong.
Yep.
But even when we did have leads, we couldn't even hold
Couldn't
them
keep them.
at all. So
Yeah.
the song I picked for the 49ers is All Falls Down, Kanye West. It all fell down. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong. If you listen to the lyrics that Kanye was talking about in that song, now I will say this: this is original Kanye, not the Kanye, not the
Not
Kanye
Kanye
that went,
now. Okay.
not Kanye now. But
Okay.
if you listen to that song and listen to the words, he's talking about things that are messing up and things like that, then that is indicative of the 49ers last season.
Okay, that's a good one. I respect that one. So, okay, so season happens, season ends. Now we get into free agency. And I mentioned before, I feel like you all were like the Bills of last season, as far as, well, the Bills still kind of have salary cap issues, but you all had so many people hitting the cap, so many things going on. How did you feel like the team maneuvered through the offseason and free agency?
Well, I'm just going to give you this list of people that are not on the team this year.
Okay.
That would be Javon Hargrave, which I would say some people would say that's a good thing he's not because, of course, he had issues stopping the run. But he also
Yeah.
got injured last year. Leonard Floyd, one and done. Debo Samuel traded to the Washington Commanders. You got Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga that both went to the Denver Broncos. Mooney Ward signs with the Indianapolis Colts, so I'm going to see him a lot this year. You've got Aaron Banks that went to the Packers. Let's see, he's a guard. You got Jalen Moore, who was a backup offensive tackle, played when Trent Williams was playing. He let's see, where did he sign? He signed with the Chiefs. He actually signed with the Chiefs. So lots of losses this
Yeah.
offseason and not a lot of gains, which you really can't talk about a lot of gains because they were trying to save money to pay Brock Purdy, trying to save money to, of course, get the extension for Kittle and keep him in the book on the books. So not a lot. It's kind of like when the bill comes, and you kind of just keep. It's kind of like with student loans, and you try to pay student loans, but you defer, and then you
Yeah.
finally reach that point where you can't defer anymore. I think the 49ers, I don't think they reached the defer point where you can't defer anymore, but I figured they just like, we're tired of deferring. Let's go ahead and just pay this
This
bill
time.
and move forward.
Yeah. So you mentioned two things that I wanted to call out. So the first one is Brock Purdy. What are your thoughts on
Mhm.
Brock Purdy as far as how much you think he should get paid? Because whatever, what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy and what do you think they should do with his salary?
I mean, honestly, you've got to pay him within the top quarterbacks. You have to. That's just
Mm,
the going rate and what it has to be. Whether you hate it or love it, it is what it is. I mean, you've got a Dak Prescott that probably has less wins in terms of less I would say less penetration into the playoffs and being the Super Bowl.
that's true.
He's never been there. But you have Brock Purdy that's been there. And to me, I'm like, you got a guy that has come in and made himself into a viable quarterback. You can have the thoughts about his arm strong enough, all those different things or whatever. But he gets the ball where it needs to go. And then last year he had one of his best seasons, despite all the losses that were around him. So that ought to tell you that he may be able to man this quarterback position and lead the
Okay.
49ers forward. So you got to pay him. I would say you probably are paying him. I wouldn't say you probably paying him top dollar, but you do have to pay him within the range of the top 5 quarterbacks that are out there, pretty
Mm,
much.
okay. And then Trent Williams. How is Trent? Is he
Ah,
how like I thought this was going to be the draft where they try to find somebody to potentially get ready to kind of
mhm,
you know what I mean. I won't say it, but
mhm.
how do
Yep.
you feel about Trent? Are you kind of there too, or what are we feeling about him?
I love Trent. I love Trent. I mean, love watching him play, but also you got to remember this man is like 185 years old by offensive tackle and dog years. I
Yeah,
mean, I like him.
yeah,
Love to watch him play, but he's not the same guy he once was. I mean,
no,
even with that, he's still a very solid tackle, but eventually you've got to put that plan in place to move forward and rip that band-aid off.
yeah,
I don't think the 49ers were ready to rip that band-aid off.
okay,
So, I would say probably next year would probably be that time, but this year they didn't really want to rip the band-aid off. They already had taken a lot of hits to the system already this offseason, so I guess they just didn't want to take this one as well.
okay. Well, That's fair. I respect that. And then my last kind of question about free agency is, did anything shock you about free agency? Like, were you, as a fan, I'm sure you had been hearing many a times and you knew about the money and things like that. But was there anyone where you were like, wait, but why him? Like, what? Or were you kind of like,
Well,
yeah, okay, we got to do what you got to do?
well, I thought Jalen Moore. I didn't see Jalen Moore getting paid by the Kansas City Chiefs. I didn't
Okay.
definitely didn't see that one. But hey, when you get a lot of chances to play and you play in
Hmm.
an offensive friendly system that
Yep.
Kyle Shanahan creates, people are going to see you, and you're
Yeah.
playing at a premium position. They're definitely going to want to pay you, and that's what the Chiefs saw, and that's what the Chiefs
Okay.
did. And I will say, God bless them. They're still trying to, you know, shop in the bargain bin to get that offensive tackle to protect Patrick Mahomes. But
Yeah.
hey, God
What a
bless them. If they
feat.
want to do that, you
Yeah.
go right ahead and do so. I'm not saying that Jalen Moore's not good. I'm just saying you're paying him like or you're bringing him in like he's just going to solve all your issues.
Right.
But I would say there's probably not a ton of tape on him to be like, okay, cool, he's the guy. But we'll see what happens. It's all I
Yeah,
can
the
say for them.
Chiefs. It's funny how every team, you could probably think of one thing for every team where they kind of struggle. And it's so fascinating to me. The Chiefs just cannot protect Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they can't
Yeah.
find five guys to protect him. It's actually it's mind-boggling to me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the draft. So your first two draft picks, I was very familiar with them. One
Mm-hmm.
because, well, they both play in the SEC. Obviously, one played for Texas, one played for Georgia. But how do
Mm-hmm.
you feel like the draft went overall for you? Was there anybody that you like? What's your favorite pick? The pick where you're like, yes, this is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was the pick where you were just kind of like, we just got that guy because we had so many picks that we needed to get someone?
Well, first off, I would have to say that you can tell that Robert Salah has definitely had his imprint on this draft because they drafted
Yep.
a ton of defensive players,
Did.
which I'm very happy that Robert Salah is back with the 49ers as the defensive coordinator because he brings tons and tons of energy. I mean, I get excited watching him coach, let
Ooh, I love
alone
that.
seeing the team play. So,
Yeah. Okay.
I
Okay.
definitely, that was I didn't mention that in free agency, but he was definitely a very key addition, and very many 49 fans were very happy that he was
Yeah.
coming back.
Okay.
So his imprint was definitely on this draft. I would say the pick that I like the most, of course, I have a couple if you don't mind.
Okay.
The first one, of course, Michael Williams. Anytime you pick a Georgia defensive lineman, you break up the Philadelphia Georgia pipeline and get a defensive lineman. I'm enthused and excited. I mean, you got the Trayvon Walkers, you got God, why am I forgetting the guy's name in Philly? I know it, Carter.
Oh, Jordan
Carter's
David.
is like
Yeah.
Carter, Jordan's there as well.
Which one? Which one do
Um,
you want me to name? Like,
Yeah, exactly, right. But anytime in this day and age, when you pick a Georgia defensive lineman or Georgia defensive player, it's almost like you're just striking gold. So I'm hoping that Mikel Williams will be that guy to strike gold, especially opposite of Nick Bosa, because
yeah.
it just seems like teams key on him, and then the other side just can't make it happen. So hopefully that works out. And
Okay.
Georgia defensive linemen, defensive players, let's get to work. I like this pick.
I
The
like
other
it.
pick I like the most, Alfred Collins. That is a
Yay!
big,
Hook 'em.
big, big man. That's a big man.
Yeah. Yeah.
6'6", 332 pounds. If people run on us with him in there, I'm going to be very upset. Because last year, of course, 28th, and, anticipated versus run. That's
Yeah.
not good. That's not 49ers football. Stop the run, release the pass rushers on third down. That is what the 49ers do. Couldn't do that last season. Hopefully Alfred Collins adds to that, and it's like, okay, cool. He got this lockdown. He's not being moved. You're gonna have to go elsewhere and run side to side, and that's when Fred Warner shows up to play. Um, Scratch your head move. Curtis Rourke, quarterback, Indiana. Why? Why do we need
Yeah.
to
I
draft
don't
him?
know. I don't know.
And, I know he had a great college season last year. That's fine. That's all dandy and good. But draft more offensive linemen. This is what the
Yeah.
49ers do. Draft offensive linemen late. You work them through, get them better with the O-line coach who does miracles out there. And you get that guy prepared to play and basically eventually step out there on the field. You drafted one O lineman out of Iowa. That's cool. But why not draft two? Why
Yeah.
not draft a couple to get prepared? Why not draft an offensive tackle? I mean, why not do that? That's what I was thinking in my mind.
I
So
mean, I honestly was thinking I was actually shocked that they didn't take a tackle. Even if you're not willing to give it, first round, second round, I got it. It's a little
mhm,
sensitive. I got it. But, you know, I mean, Father Time is Father Time. It happened to Jason Peters. It happened to
mhm,
like it's happening to Dwayne Brown. Like it's happened. Like it's happened to Joe Thomas. It's like
mhm.
I mean, yeah. So anyway, that's
Father
my
Time is undefeated. Father Time is definitely undefeated.
yeah. So, and then, so the other thing about the draft, I'm curious to know how is
Mhm,
Christian McCaffrey? Like, with you all in the fan base, you hear probably way more than I do. Is
mhm.
he healthy? Like, is he going to be ready to go week one? Is his injury lingering? Was last season just last season and we're just going to regroup it? Like, how is he progressing?
He's proclaimed himself ready to go, so he's going to be
Okay.
out there.
Okay.
But I, as a fan of the team, I'm still a little nervous. I'm like, I don't know. Let's start getting, let's do what we usually used to do before we got
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey and we had just a stable of running backs. Just, hey, throw that guy in there, he would get it done. But
Got it.
I will say that the guy they did add in the draft that I'm kind of intrigued by that they have behind him, Jordan James out of Oregon. I
Yeah.
mean,
Or,
he's
yeah.
actually I will say this, he is from the Middle Tennessee area, by the way. So he went to the same high school I did for a couple years and then transferred out, went somewhere else.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with him. He's not necessarily the biggest guy, but that guy has jets. And I'm
Okay.
like, yes, we need that. Add
Good
him to the
balance.
team, and he can, run the football, catch the football, and he runs a lot tougher than his size. So, but getting back to Christian McCaffrey, I mean, you hope for the best, but you hold your breath at the same time. And if you don't hold your breath, if you hold your breath too long, you might pass out or worse. So that's all I can say, when it
Okay.
comes to
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey.
That's fair. So, where do you think you all stand after everything? Do you feel like you're contenders to go to win the Super Bowl? Do you feel like you're contenders to win the division? Do you feel like you're rebuilding? Do you feel like you're playing it by ear? Where do you feel like right now San Francisco is? What are your expectations of them for 2025?
Well, my expectations, I will say this, that, Shanahan and John Lynch have kind of spoiled us all as fans for a little bit. I mean, of course,
Mhm.
when you went to the Super Bowl and you lose the Super Bowl, you always come back that next year and you don't make the playoffs or anything, which that happened to the 49ers previously, and it didn't happen this past season. So what
Yeah.
I expect is at least 9 to 10 wins. I know
Okay.
that's may seem crazy to some people, but I expect 9 to 10 wins. They've kind of spoiled us and they've kind of figured out things. I'm looking at this kind of like in a Rams sort of way because the Rams went to the Super Bowl, then didn't, then nobody ever saw them coming and they got hot, you know, things like that with no name players that people didn't know, but then decided to become names. So I'm thinking
Good
in
point.
that vein, we could be about 9 to 10 wins this year.
Okay.
Um, and kind of a measure of, we're going to have our downs, but we're definitely going to have more ups than downs. That's kind of the way I think about it.
Are you I think because I feel like this when I talk about the Steelers, so I'm just kidding, gonna ask you, do you feel like
Mhm.
your win total is because of the faith you have in the organization to kind of figure it out?
Definitely that. And then
Okay.
also, I do cover the AFC South and the 49ers play against the AFC South this season. And I will say
Oh,
this,
that's great for you
the
guys.
AFC
That's
South
fantastic.
actually the AFC South hasn't been the greatest the last couple of years.
Yep.
I would say last year I thought the AFC South would be one of the sneaky good divisions. I was totally wrong. Totally, utterly wrong. This year,
Yeah.
could it be? Potentially, because Jacksonville and they got Liam Cohen down there saying Duval like he's the captain of the love boat. But anyway,
Duval. I'm
um,
like,
no, 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 no. Oh, he didn't say it like that. He said Duval. I'm like, hold on,
I'm
man. You
like, give
about to
us a
do
little
the
culture, bro. Like,
yeah, it was just
yeah,
bad. That was bad, but he,
yeah.
he fixed it the second time he said it. But he may be able to make Jacksonville look even better this year. The
Yeah.
Colts, they're still trying to figure out things at quarterback, and then even though they did have finally get the tight end they've always wanted, Texans didn't look as great last season, and Titans still trying to get things figured out and get things back on track. Although I will say there's a lot of optimism in that office this
Yeah.
offseason.
Did the 49ers play the Titans in Nashville this year?
Yes. No.
Yeah.
No. They play them.
Oh,
They play them in the Bay Area, which
okay.
I actually have been there both times they played the 49ers in Nashville. And
Okay.
just a tidbit, actually my cousin played for the 49ers at one point.
Fun. That's so fun.
Played wide
That's fun.
receiver for them during he was there when Colin Kaepernick was there.
Got it. Good old Colin Kaepernick. Oh man, what could have been? Well, I love that. So tell me who are you like? I actually have a question about the Titans because Tavondre Sweat's
Mhm.
there. How was he
Yep.
last year?
Meatloaf. Yeah, Meatloaf was awesome. He was awesome.
Okay.
That he likes to be preferred. If you give him a nickname, he likes to be called Meatloaf. Not
He's
not
he's a Texas Longhorn, so he is
oh
a
yeah, I know.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
like I started saying I just need somebody that can stand in the way. And I got that from him because like the one thing he's gonna do is just get in the way. And so,
Mhm.
and that's his job, right? He's literally doing his
Mhm.
job. But it's amazing to see. And so that's why I'm excited for Alfred Collins to come in and say,
Mhm.
you were behind somebody that you saw get drafted and do their thing. And now
Mhm.
obviously he was fantastic for Texas last year. So I'm excited to see him play for the 49ers. I think it's a great pickup. So I'm super excited about that. So
Well,
love it.
one thing I will tell you about Tavondre, which I would say Brian Baldinger gave him the nickname T Pain, but he likes Meatloaf more than T
He
Pain.
didn't like it.
He
Yeah.
said his aunt gave him that nickname Meatloaf, so that's why he likes that one better.
Yeah.
But the funniest thing that happened last year is when he had that interception that was running down the
Oh, when
sideline.
it
I
was
mean, the
stiff
amount of
arming.
energy, yes, the amount of energy that was in that building. I was in the press box when that happened, so
Okay.
I'm like, wow, in the press box, we're all looking at each other. That really just happened. So we get to talk to him after the game and ask him what he was thinking when he got the interception. Right? He gave us 5 words: "Take it to the house." That's literally what he said right then and there. I was cracking up.
Makes sense. Yeah, I love that. I love it when guys leave Texas and stay the same. Like he's
Mhm,
everything. Like, anyways, this isn't about him. But I just wanted to.
mhm,
I forgot about him being there until just a second ago, and so I just wanted to mention it. So,
mhm.
who is an underrated player or underrated position group for the 49ers that you feel like don't often get talked about? You can give me like one guy if you want, or you can give me a position group.
I'll give you one guy, and he's actually from Middle Tennessee as well that plays for the 49ers. For the Middle Tennessee area. He didn't go to Middle Tennessee. He went to Tennessee.
Okay.
That's a wide receiver, Jawan Jennings. Now, Jawan Jennings has continued to develop year after year after year. He made tough catches. He made big plays, especially when the 49ers were in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl in the 2023 season. So,
Okay.
yeah, he definitely is a guy that's continued
I
to
like that.
develop. He would have had 1,000 yards last year. Of course, he got in a fight at the end of the game versus in the beginning of the game versus the Arizona Cardinals because he is a physical guy and he is a guy that will not back down. Of course, he got put out of the game. He was 25 yards short of a 1,000-yard season. He was the leading wide receiver for the 49ers last year,
Wow.
975 yards and 6 touchdowns. Nobody talks about him. Nobody knows it. So he's actually
Okay.
entering the last year of his contract, which it's going to be interesting just to see what happens with him. He's not the fastest guy, but he does use his body well, and he's one of the toughest guys on the team, in my opinion. So that is a guy that does not get talked about enough. Probably in the offseason, he's either going to get a deal with the 49ers, which, with considering the cap issues and things like that, may not happen, or he's going to be looked at by teams across the league and maybe a good contract, not necessarily one's going to break the bank, but you're going to get consistent production out of him
Okay. Yeah.
and
And
consistently
listen,
going to show up.
I love that. There's certain positions where I just need you to do the bare minimum, right? And that is catch the
Mhm,
ball, don't jump off sides, and I don't want the penalties. And the receiver is
mhm,
one of those. Like, obviously, you want to have, what you want the guys. I got it. But I think what rounds out that division, that group, is that guy that's just solid. He's just solid. If you throw him the
mhm,
ball, he's going to catch it. He's going to do all the things. He's not going to be a liability. And I love that. So, and that's a good call. I never would have mentioned him. So that's a good call. What is your hot take? What hot take do you have about the 49ers that a lot of fans probably would be like, don't say that?
The team will still be offensively dynamic this season. Now,
Ooh,
of course,
they don't
everyone's
think
looking
that?
at a lot of people not very sure because you're losing Debo and you're losing that player that can do all those different things. Christian McCaffrey's kind of banged up from last season. I mean, who are you got at wide receivers? A lot of people thinking. I mean, they did pick up Demarcus Robinson, by the way, from the Los Angeles Rams. And he may be potentially facing suspension to start the season, by the way.
Oh, great. Great.
So a lot of different things have changed. A lot of people are not confident, and they don't know what to expect out of Slick Rick at wide receiver. Ricky Pearsall, by the way, that's his government name.
That's his
Um,
nickname. Okay.
yeah, and they've called him that all the way back since whenever. I don't know, but you got him. But basically you got Kittle, you've got Purdy. Those are the guys that people know. But other than that, you've got your wide receivers and people that are trying to kind of, I guess, get back on the field and get together because Brandon Ayuk is coming back from an ACL injury. A lot of
Yeah.
different things people have questions about. So now, I think this offense can be just as dynamic this next season as it was in previous years, despite Debo not being there, despite
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey and things like that. Because I think you give Kyle Shanahan a whole offseason to get in the lab. And plus you also, he also is a guy that's okay. Sometimes it's to his detriment, but he's also a guy that likes to prove people wrong with
Mm-hmm.
what he can do. So that's why I think they'll be offensively dynamic again this season. They'll still be offensively dynamic.
Makes sense. Okay. So if you were GM for one day,
Mm-hmm.
or what would be your first move?
Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Find a replacement for Trent Williams. He's not getting any younger.
Mm,
Uh, you got to make that transition at one point. I know
hmm.
he's going to have his contract issues and he's going to sit out camp and do all
He
those
won't be
different
there. Yeah,
things.
he'll be there week
It
one.
does it doesn't It will be there week one and he will be just fine right there at offensive tackle. But eventually you've got to replace him. I mean, like I said, he's 187 years old. Eventually you got to replace him. And you don't have anybody really in the building, in my opinion, that can replace him. But, like I said, the 49ers do develop offensive linemen. So there may be somebody I'm not even thinking of that they're like,
Okay.
okay, well, he's ready to be that guy.
Yeah. Good old Trent. I'm going to be sad when he does retire. But yeah, I hear you loud and clear. I hear you. So awesome. So we're in our overtime questions. I have 4 questions because overtime, you go for it on 4 downs. Like I have all these cool connections that I think are cool. And then when I say them out loud, I'm like, this is so cheesy, but I'm doing it anyway. So that's where we're at. So so let's just start with the first one, and then I'll tell you when it gets a little tricky with people hearing different things for the question that I mentioned before we started. So I
Okay.
would love to know, which division rival do you love to hate the most and why?
I'll say this. I don't really hate all of them or any of
Okay.
them. Now, I did have a strong passion towards a few teams over the years. Now, remember the Legion of Boom, Richard Sherman, and all those guys were
Oh yeah.
in Seattle. Now, that was at the height of that one. Of course, Richard Sherman ended up being a 49er, so I was
Right.
forgiven at that point. I'm joking. I still loved Richard Sherman anyway, even though he was on the
Mhm.
rival. But that one, and now it's kind of the focus is on the Rams because every time the 49ers go to Los Angeles, it's pretty much all red in there. And it's just always fun because you never really find a ton of Rams fans, but the ones that you do find, they're definitely going to talk a lot. So,
Okay.
definitely I would say I don't hate any of those teams, but I have a strong passion. I had a strong passion for both of those teams.
Okay. Fair. If you could change
Mhm,
one thing about your franchise, it could be anything.
mhm.
So ownership, stadium, uniforms, anything you can think of. What would it be and why?
It would be uniforms, specifically going back to when the 49ers broke out the black uniforms. I absolutely loved those black jerseys. I hated it that they wore the gold helmets or the gold and red and gold helmets. I didn't like that.
Okay.
The reason I just didn't like the fit with it. If they had a black helmet with like gold and red accents to it in terms
Like
of
a
the
matte
logo and
black?
thing, yeah, it would have actually went a
Mm,
little better with it, or just a black helmet in general would have went
yeah.
better with it. They wore those one year and then they just disappeared into oblivion. I think those I would love those to come back. All black uniform, a blackout in the stadium, Levi Stadium. That would be on, and then to top it all off, put it on Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football. That would just make it. That would just take it all over the top for me. I would
Yeah.
be excited. I probably would put some eye black on for that game.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so the next question is where it gets tricky. So the question was if you could swap one player from your team with one from a rival, who would it be and
Mm-hmm.
why? Some people are answering if you could take one player from one team and put it on your team, who would that be and why?
Mm-hmm.
And then some people are saying if they could take a player from any team in the NFL to put on their team, who would it be and why? So you can answer this whatever you want to do. If you want to answer all three of them, if you would just want to answer the
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to answer is fine by me.
Well, I dug into this question. I looked, and I've talked about this gentleman earlier that I think is very underrated, but I would definitely ship him out for a piece from the Los Angeles Rams. That would be
Okay.
Jawan Jennings. I would actually swap him for Devontae Adams. Now, if
Oh,
you put
oh yeah.
Devontae Adams there with the 49ers in that Kyle Shanahan offense, I mean, you saw what he
Yes.
did with Julio Jones. I mean, one year.
That's
I
a good
mean,
one.
imagine what he could do with Devontae Adams. I mean, Devontae, for those that have not watched Devontae Adams does not put hands on defensive backs when he's making his moves off the line. He moves much more like a basketball player, literally with the moves that he makes. It's almost like he's doing a crossover every single time he puts a move on. And I can just imagine how much great work he could do with the 49ers with the because the systems are very similar because with McVay
Yeah. Shanahan.
Shanahan. So, yeah, I could imagine the insane amount of numbers he could put up with the 49ers offense.
I
Jawan
like that.
Jennings, love Jawan Jennings, but I would definitely trade him and swap him for Devontae Adams for sure.
Okay. Do you want to take any other players in the NFL and just add them to your team? If you could do that, who would it be?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Mm,
You should probably go get
hmm.
Joe Alt and have him be your left tackle.
Oh, definitely that one. But I was actually thinking, um, more of a an actual defensive end. To be
Who?
honest, I mean, throw Trayvon Walker on the 49ers, put him on the
Mm,
opposite
okay.
side of the bus. That would be pretty doggone nice.
I
So,
like it. Okay, cool. Yeah. First of all, I loved the question when I figured out what I was going to ask about the swapping one player, but I kind of like what it's
mhm,
also evolved to because I think it's cool to kind of dream a little bit and be like, you
mhm,
know what? If I had to pick, so anyways, so thank you for that. I appreciate you playing along with the craziness of
mhm.
the dynamics of talking to people. That's basically what that is. And then the last question though is kind of the same thing. So the question
Mhm,
was pick three words that describe your fan base.
mhm.
Some people have made it into like a very short sentence. So you can kind of put together the sentence that you probably think it's not the most appropriate all the time, but sometimes people will make a short sentence. So you can do the three words if you choose, or you can do a short sentence if you choose. It's totally up to you.
Okay, well, I've got the three words. I
Okay.
would say passionate because definitely everyone is still talks about the quest for six
Yeah.
and red and gold till we dead and gold,
Oh,
dead and
okay.
cold. I'm sorry, that's what a lot of people would say in terms of 49ers fans. I don't know if you've
Okay.
heard that one, but yeah, I've heard that one so many times. Let's see, red and gold till you dead and cold. Yep. And then of course I would say level-headed in some aspects. You do always have your fanatics. That's with any
Yeah.
fan base, but I've met a lot of level-headed 49ers fans that actually can give you a whole conversation, not only in the 49ers, but the entire NFL and actually make it make sense. Not every fan base can do that. So I'll
Very
say
true.
that one. And then I'll also say confident. Now
That's a
we're
good one.
definitely a confident bunch. we're definitely a confident bunch. We're gonna say, hey, I think we can do this. And I've said plenty of times, and I still remember going into Philly a couple years ago after the mess that happened when we lost all the quarterbacks and had to go with Christian McCaffrey at quarterback.
Yeah.
So I remember going into that game. I was excited going into that game, and I know a lot of Philly fans, and I was telling them, I'm like, hey, it might get a little ugly. And they were looking at me like, okay, we whooped on y'all last year. Right? I was like, look, that's cool and all, but we about to come and do and handle business, town business in Philly. So, and a lot of Philly fans, of course, that was a beatdown that happened, and Philly wasn't the same for the rest of the season. They just weren't.
Yeah.
It's like we took their soul at that point.
The confident word is a good one. I don't I
Mhm.
don't think I've heard that. I don't know. At this point, I like that though, because I do agree. I do think that there are certain fan bases that just come with a different swag or a different confidence or a different like, we'll be fine. Like even when I
Mhm.
complain about the Steelers, I'm like, I'm complaining because I'm going to complain because I don't know who QB1 is. And if you tell me it's Mason Rudolph, now I'm even more pissed off. Uh, but
I
I
was gonna
also
say that,
still
but I'm gonna leave it alone
I
because
also
I saw him
still
last year in Nashville. So hey.
he was a Steeler before he went there. So, like
Oh
our
yeah.
big free agent signing so far, right, as a recording of this, is Mason
Mhm.
Rudolph. And so, even with that,
Mhm.
I'm still like, I'm annoyed with them. There's things they're doing that I'm frustrated, all the things. And I'm like, I mean, we're going to win 19 games though. I mean, don't go crazy. So it's like,
Mhm.
I can be as mad as I can be and I can list all the things we need to do. And I will still show up and be like, no, but we're still probably going to contend for going to the playoffs. So don't think that I'm saying we're going to suck. Like that's not what I'm saying. So anyways, so I totally agree with you. Well, that those were all the questions that I wanted to ask you about the 49ers. Is there anything you want us to know about the 49ers that either you wanted me to ask, anything else you want to say, anything you want to ask, or anything that you want to end on? Because this is ultimately this is your show. I'm just providing the space.
Well, I would say thank you for allowing me on your show and allowing me to actually talk about the team I'm a fan of because I don't get
Yeah.
to do that quite that often, as you could probably tell.
Yeah.
Um, but and the secret is though that a lot of people don't know. I could talk about every single team in the NFL
That's how
and
I
break them
feel.
down backwards and forwards. So,
Yeah.
this is what I do.
I love it.
So, that part but as far as the 49ers, anything I would like anyone to know, just the tradition is always there. They're not in San Francisco anymore, by the way. They're in Santa Clara. I've been to the
Yeah.
actual Levi Stadium.
How
So
and how has that worked with the fans not being in San Francisco, actually going to a new city?
Mm, hadn't
They
changed
don't
very
care.
much because the
Okay.
funny part is you have San Francisco leaving to go to Santa Clara, and then you have the Warriors going from in Oakland to San Francisco. So it's almost like you just
Right.
swap teams pretty much.
Okay.
But the fans are
Fair.
still going to be there for both of those. I would say in the big rivalry games, it's probably different for the Golden State Warriors because the building just it's loud and electric, but just the feeling of Oakland is not the same in terms
Mm,
of the games not being in Oakland is not the same
got it.
from
Okay.
what I've heard.
Okay.
But that part, and then also if you're at the top of the stadium, you can look to your right and you'll see the airport. Actually, I've actually been to the top of that
Huh.
stadium and you can see like the San Jose airport right there. You can literally see it over to your
Interesting.
right. Yeah, I've had a
Okay.
tour of the entire stadium from top to bottom, and there's also a San Francisco 49ers history museum, and the team actually was owned by twins at first before it was owned by any of the people that it's been owned by, which I thought was
Nice.
quite interesting as well. Um, Anything else about the 49ers? Well, I will say this that the 49ers last year was very much indicative of them in terms of how they stopped the run, how they played defense, because of course they let a lot of leads slide by the wayside, which that is not 49ers defense. With Robert Salah
Right.
coming back, that's going to probably bring the intensity back. I'm pretty sure Fred Warner is chomping at the bit. He was playing on a broke ankle pretty much for
Yeah.
majority of the season last year, which is insane. So I expect this team to kind of be talked about probably in either the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, or it's going to be the last 6 weeks of the season in terms of how they're doing on the field, whether it surprised some folks or whether some folks expected what they're doing.
Okay. I like it. When the 49ers are on my TV, the only time I don't cheer for them, I cheer for them. I mean, the only time when the 49ers play the Eagles, I feel away. I just want to see a good game. And then when Lamar plays anyone, I kind of feel a certain way. But other than that, I love watching the 49ers. Fred Warner is my favorite player in the NFL. And it might not even be close now that I think about it. But so I enjoy them. I enjoy every single thing they bring to the table. And I was super excited to have you talk about the 49ers because I've watched you talk about the AFC South and I've watched that and I'm like, no, let's talk about your team. Let's talk about so thank you for that. And I appreciated like just getting connected with you and scheduling this. I know you're super busy. So thank you so much for just being willing to chat with me. It means a lot to me.
Well, again, thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to actually talk about the team that I grew up loving for like the first. I can't remember the last time I really got to talk about the 49ers. I really
Oh,
cannot remember
really?
because I talk about the AFC South, and people bring me to talk about the AFC South or a team in the AFC South a lot,
Yeah.
but I just never really get to talk about the 49ers a lot.
Well, you are booked with me 49ers anytime. So you just let me know. Awesome. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
All right.